Bad news for the Blue Jays and bad news for presumptive closer Kirby Yates, who has a flexor pronator strain in his right arm, is going to miss multiple weeks. Let's talk about it. This is Instant Analysis presented by Tylenol Rapid Release Gel Caps, rapid release for rapid relief. This is Arden Zwelling with Ben Nicholson-Smith. And Ben, I guess this was always the caveat when we talked about Kirby Yates coming into this season, was that he's capable of being one of the most effective closers in baseball when healthy. And he was anything but. In 2020, he battled forearm discomfort. He battled inflammation. His season ultimately came to an end after only a half dozen starts because he underwent surgery to remove bone chips from his elbow. We believed that he was healthy and ready to go for 2021, but it seems, Ben, that he is not going to be ready to go and that the Blue Jays are going to be without him for quite some time.
That's right. It was just a couple weeks ago he was telling us that he's full go for the season, pitched in a couple of spring games, and clearly ran into a setback. So unclear exactly what that means, how long he's going to be out for, what this recovery process looks like for Kirby Yates. But clearly for this Blue Jays team that's already seen Thomas Hatch and Nate Pearson deal with injuries this spring, their closer, their presumptive closer, as you said, someone who has been an elite reliever in the major leagues, for him to be sidelined, that's not good. And now the Blue Jays are going to have to figure some things out on the fly.
Yeah, and we all had a pretty close eye on him, I think, as he returned to the mound this spring. You know, the Blue Jays were certainly cautious. He didn't appear in a game until March 11th, and then he actually went 9 days until he got into his next Grapefruit League game. And over those two velocities, his velocity was down, over those two appearances, I should say, his velocity was down a little bit, just a couple of miles an hour off of his career norm. So, that was something that raised eyebrows a little bit at this time of year. And I think that any time that the team is coming out initially and saying it's going to be multiple weeks suggests that this is a longer term thing for Kirby Yates. And so it seems unlikely that we're going to see him until well into the regular season. So, Ben, who do you think that creates opportunity for at the back end of this Blue Jays bullpen when Charlie Montoyo is looking to close games?
Right. And this is something the Jays dealt with last year with Ken Giles. So it won't be a new challenge for them, unfortunately. But we saw last year that Jordan Romano was a guy who really stepped into that role. He seemed to really embrace pitching and leverage. He says he wants to pitch in leverage. So, in a sense, it's an opportunity for him, although he would have had that opportunity anyways. And, you go further down the depth chart, maybe Rafael Dolis, Ryan Baraki, David Phelps. The reality is it's going to have to be a group effort from these guys. There's so many relievers in the course of a season that need to contribute, and that includes in leverage. So they're going to need also someone to step up and emerge because, as we saw last year, the group that you start with is rarely the group that you finish with.
Yeah, and savvy managers in 2021 ought to be managing to leverage anyway. So if you encounter a big spot in a tight game in the sixth or seventh inning, go to the guy who's the best matchup and the guy who's going to get you those outs when you need them. There's no sense in saving somebody for a slim lead in the ninth inning when you might not even end up getting there. So I imagine the Blue Jays will have some flexibility in how they deploy their bullpen. I think some interesting fallout from this, just to wrap up, is actually how it actually creates an opening in the bullpen for a bit of a down roster arm to make this bullpen on opening day. And I wonder if that creates a little bit of a lane for AJ Cole, who's a non-roster invitee, obviously pitched very well out of the Blue Jays bullpen in 2020. He's in camp on a minor league deal. He'd need a 40-man roster spot. His opt-out isn't until mid-May. So those are all factors that the Blue Jays will have to consider here. But I do wonder if there's a bit more of a path to a roster spot here for a guy like him. Is there anyone else that you identify that this might create an opportunity for?
You think about Liriano, you think about Tim Mesa from the left side. Those are a couple more non-roster arms. But, like you said, this team is going to need a lot of arms. And you think about after that first off day, 2 days into the season, they start 16 in a row. So you're probably looking at a 9-man bullpen for most of that. And there will be opportunity for some guys to step in and take on some of those innings.
Yeah, that's right. This is why the Blue Jays built out as much pitching depth as possible this offseason for this year. It's why all clubs endeavored to, is because pitchers are going to get hurt, and especially this season as their workloads fluctuate pretty wildly after a shortened 2020. This is why you bring in those depth veterans on minor league deals, because this season, more than any, you're going to need them. Looks like the Blue Jays need them before the season even begins.